The really good salespeople I've seen, they lean in, they don't talk about pricing early, they do a lot of discovery. I think that the key thing around teach back as well is not just understanding the features and platform features, etc., but it's also understanding the human connective tissue as well. And I think when you augment that sort of teach back format so that the retention stays in there, plus you're building empathy and you're putting yourself in the shoes of the buyer, that's a very powerful combination.
You can't get a transformational result from an informational product. If you think of a book or an online course, you're not going to get transformation out of that unless you've got 3 further steps. You need application by an expert. You need somebody to tell you how to apply the knowledge that you've got. And so AI can do part of the job if there's not a human there. You need the why, that confirmation you're doing it right, that consultation, and it will give you part of the lifting, but not all of it, because we're people. Where I think AI misses is the emotion.
Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the latest in the award-winning OnBase podcast series. I'm your host, Paul Gibson, and we always look for different topics to discussion. This time we've also decided to take it up a level by having more than one guest on the session. So I'm excited that today I'm talking with both Barry Flaherty and David Thomson from SWADA with us to discuss an interesting topic, scaling without soul crushing, real stories of go-to-market growth that worked, which sounds to me like a really interesting topic. So hi both, excited to get up on the show with you both today, and thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having us.
For having us this morning.
Good stuff. So before we get into the topic, I think it's a really interesting podcast today. Start with a simple question, if you don't mind. Could you just both take us through your journeys to where you are today and what you're currently doing, and a little bit about SWADA?
Yeah, so I'll start my journey. So a bit of a rags to riches story. Born in Scotland, 1969, dyslexic, never really going to do anything. Left school at 16 without doing any qualifications. In 86, decided to become a soldier and join the army. Status quo were playing, you're in the army now. And the army was really good for me in terms of it taught me about discipline, structure, control, processes, and also how to box. I became a boxing champion in the army, which was really good. Left the army at 21, became a soldier. So became a factory worker, worked in Dr. Martin's shoe factory. Do you remember the old Dr. Martens with the airwear boots? I worked in there, and while I was working in there, I read a book by a guy called William Clement Stone, and it was called The Success System That Never Fails. And I remember sitting in the boxes in 1990. Bobby Brown was singing My Prerogative, and I'm sitting in the boxes in the shoe factory, and I learned about a positive mental attitude, and that being something that you actually do, not something that you think. Most people think a positive mental attitude is like a thought structure in your head, and I thought, you actually need to do something. So I went out, reached out to William Clement Stone and got a job as a financial advisor, and left the shoe factory and started learning about systems within sales, started learning about Socrates, framing, positive mental attitude. And then the following year, I struggled in that job. The following year, I got a job as a mortgage advisor. I couldn't even spell mortgage. I didn't know it had a T in it, but I'll get this job as a mortgage advisor. And in my first week working at Connell Mortgage Services, I earned £500. And my first thought was, how do I keep this job? Because earning £130 in the shoe factory was one thing, but earning £500 in 1991 was, was £20,000 a year. That was a lot of money. And I started studying everything sat behind sales. And from there, I went on to become the top financial advisor in the mortgage industry. I built a business where we had a couple of hundred people working for us. And we trained our people utilizing teach back and utilizing mind maps. And we taught them on everything that sat behind sales, from pitching, framing, negotiating, and influence. And that took us into, when I'd sold my business, creating a training business to teach people how to be great at sales, and how to scale their salespeople by teaching them in the same way the army taught me, like standard operational procedures, all the component parts. And in the same way that in the shoe factory, they had a way of doing things, they had a track. That's why we built our financial advisors, built a business and scaled it. And then that's what we have now within SWADA. It's a learning management system where people learn something and they teach back what they learn. Awesome. And that's the story. And it worked. And fundamentally, it worked and it works. So happy days. And it's, fun.
Awesome journey. And I still have a pair of DMs. So that's my age as well now.
There you go.
Follow that, Barry.
Yeah, well, mine's is a little bit more traditional. I'm sort of your classic, came out of uni, I did my languages and tourism and business degree. So I went straight to Europe where I kind of spent a lot of years doing startups, digital agencies in the Middle East, UK, lived in Holland 12 years and Portugal and everywhere in between. So quite entrepreneurial from an early age. I was back in London after Qatar, and then a guy I went to school with got me involved in Jitterbit, where I stayed 13 years as well. So proper enterprise grade stuff, working out of San Francisco, running EMEA, working across all kinds of ecosystems, obviously Salesforce, Oracle NetSuite, Microsoft, BMC. So I've probably done every sales training you can do, from medic to sales value framework selling and being sheep dipped and in the classic enterprise way. And I think since I left last year, I've been doing a lot of advisory work now for scale ups. There's 3 or 4 of them in my portfolio, corporate finance, VCs, helping them with their portfolio companies, getting into automation, deep tech. And, laterally, interestingly, a couple of interesting projects have come across my desk now as well with football and Ministry of Sound. So it seems like all the brands in the world are getting behind this AI thing. And, from your traditional enterprise stuff to scale ups, they're getting funding and doing trade missions to, going international now, because the cost of setting up a business nowadays is pretty much a hundredth of the cost in the old days, where you'd have to raise money, hire people, get an office. So it's a pretty interesting time at the minute. And then last year, that's how I got back working with Dave as well. We set up All Good People. So there's more than just selling in corporate land. There's, putting the human connection with the technology together. So we've built our own little community of a few hundred people in there as well. Plus, we're all in different AI community groups. I mean, I can't keep up with it all. It's crazy. So here today, really curious how we're going to go through this and talk about the evolution of sales and marketing and teach back and all the different things that we're seeing, so we can share with your community.
Yeah, I'm already, thank you for that. They're 2 interesting stories, and I'm already thinking there's nowhere near enough time to cover what we've got to cover off today. So I can see this is going to be a series rather than a one-off. But to try and, I suppose, start off the conversation, you both had very interesting backgrounds. Or what do you think it was that brought you, I suppose, both to focus on that intersection of sales execution, AI, and go-to-market strategies? I don't know who wants to go first. I'll leave that up to you.
Well, Dave, you've always done it, from selling financial services, I suppose. And how I got to know Dave is when I had my first child, my daughter, years ago, we moved into Dave's house and he heard I was working with Salesforce. So that's how I got to know Dave. And then we've kind of kept in touch in Northamptonshire here since then. David's built an interesting business because you've kind of blended all the sales and disciplines and the great Robert Cialdini and influence and persuasion, and you've been able to blend all of that, haven't you, I suppose, into now rolled up into an app called Swader. I've spent my career straddling 2 worlds, I guess, Paul, the human side of sales leadership and then the technological sort of disruption, if you will. So, I think over those 12, 13 years, I closed 20, 25 million in ARR. I saw firsthand that success isn't just about technology. It's about how you build culture and the team and the enablement around that piece as well. And I think, over the last few years, as an integrator, you're selling into multiple vertical sectors. So it could be retail, e-commerce, manufacturing, law firms, football clubs, airports, NGOs. And then each of those has a sort of particular nuance. And then when you throw in the lingo of technology, whether it's Salesforce or ITSM or NetSuite, it very quickly, for me, it's almost like a Rubik's Cube. So you've kind of got to, learn and adapt and absorb so much information about a particular industry. And also as a seller, it's trickier because there's new stuff coming out all the time. So then you throw in multiple regions, languages, and buying behaviors. So the whole thing gets, pretty crazy pretty quickly. And we spent a lot of money on command of the sale, command of the message. We were flying people in from around the world. We spent over $500,000 on it. And, within 2-3 years, a lot of people have left the organization. So that sort of approach to sales training back then was what it was, but the world's kind of moved on. And I know working with Dave laterally as well on agile stuff and what they're doing is pretty powerful stuff when you see how this is implemented and can be quite transformative.
So from my perspective, I guess the 2 things, it's about optimal in terms of the approach, and also simplicity. Like, I feel for people today because the world's a changing place. Everything's going faster, and if you're trying to run a business, what was good 3 months ago, it's not good today because there's something new and it's changed. And you look and you go, how do you keep up, and optimally, how do you keep up? And then also, how do you make it simple? They're the two big questions. If you're running a sales team, you can, how do we keep up with everybody else? And then how do we keep it really, really simple? And it's like, and then also we have a dispersed workforce. People are working all over the place. How do you make sure these people, are learning from each other? And I just think people before, you could get away with being pretty good, but now you need people to be brilliant. And then also you need to learn from each other. So hence the reason why we create Swader. It's like, how do I make sure that when you learn something, I know that you've learned it, you've not just watched a video. And then also after that, how do I make sure that you're talking to your colleagues? And, when you're learning to teach. Our chief science officer is the head of cognitive neuroscience at Caltech University. He's a guy called Professor Dean Mobbs. And, Dean was a normal lad in Kettering, just like me, left school with no qualifications. At, 19, he's in London painting and decorating. He couldn't sit still in the class. He's got like ADHD and God knows what else. And then he decides he's going to go to Tresham College. And just give you an idea, Tresham College is like the most normal college in the world. It's the town college in Kettering. And then he came out there, did quite well, got his GCSEs, then went off to Birmingham University, then went from there, went to Cambridge, then went off and he's, from Cambridge all over the place. He's now the head of cognitive neuroscience. And he worked on DeepMind with Demis. And when I spoke to Dean, I said, how can we make sure that people can remember something when we teach them it and keep it really simple? And he said, well, we use the Feynman technique. We'll make sure that when they learn it, they teach it back and they remember it. And so that's the key to it. Make sure they can teach it back. And if you make that social and you make AI, make it go a little bit faster and do the magic things that AI does, then it makes a difference. And so that's our approach. Simple and optimal. Get the best content in, keep it really simple, make people learn, teach back. Then you've got a chance. They're your building blocks and your steps.
Yeah, that simple is the word. Sorry. Go on.
I said, I don't know if that answers your question or not, but I mean, that's my take.
Yeah, it does. I mean, this is all informative stuff. And I think it's nice to hear simplicity, because that's the word I drum into my team day in, day out. We can make something seem as complex and difficult to use as we want, to make it seem like, wow, you've got to spend a lot of money on this because it's really complicated, right? The key is, really simply, we can solve that problem you've got. And I think that's the key to it. Keep it simple. And I think you nailed it there. So when you look back, because sales enablement, right, it's been around forever and some of it's okay, some of it's not. Was there a pivotal moment that made you realize that the traditional approaches we've always used just don't work anymore?
From my perspective, if you think about in my life, we reversed Google's algorithm in the past. We were number one in the world for all the major search terms and insurance. We used to get 10,000 leads coming through every month. And I thought I was the best thing since sliced bread. Nice red Ferrari, big country house, £1.28 million mortgage, kids in private school. And I trained my people how I thought training them would be good enough. But then Google did, in 2008, what only Google can do. It changed its algorithm. And all of a sudden, the leads that were coming in stopped. Right. And so it went from cricket. It went from like everything's busy, 200 people, busy call center, to zero. And then everyone's coming around going, what are we going to do, Dave? What are you going to do, Dave? And they're looking at you going, oh. And then your salespeople start leaving because they used to really, really easy leads and times have got hard. And all of a sudden, my wife's looking at me going, well, you need to sort it out because the kids' school fees, the £1.28 million mortgage. And we live in a normal county. We live in Northamptonshire and the business is in Wellingborough. And so I thought, oh my God. And, and there wasn't a gene pool like a big university like Bedford College or, whatever. We had to train ordinary people, normal people like me that weren't super educated, how to be great. And it was like, well, I say what, if we used semiotics, which is using words and turning them into images, and then we kept it really, really simple. And then, I worked with a guy called Dr. Robert Cialdini, who wrote the book Influence, The Science of Persuasion. I was one of 6 people in the world that could teach influence. We brought influence into the business and that made a massive difference. And we kept it ever so simple, really, really simple. But then we ended up teaching our people everything for a longer period of time. We took a 3-month gestation period to build a salesperson that could last a lifetime. So they were optimized and it was kept simple. And then that made a difference. And then all of a sudden, the business that was making 200 grand a month, all of a sudden it's making 100 grand a month, but it's 100 grand for me. And it was built on solid foundations as opposed to it being built on vaporware, which was, we were just putting them through the mill and putting them into the system, rather than taking one person and teaching them about positive mental attitude, neuro-linguistic programming, each of the influence principles, the activators, the science, turning it into images so their neural pathways are wired. And then all of a sudden you're thinking, well, okay, if we put this into a bit of tech, we could make it work. And obviously that was the birth of the business, and how things changed. But yeah, 2008, November, I'll never forget it. My old grandmother, I was born in Scotland. My old grandmother used to say, you break your heart and scatter your coppers. And that's what I wanted to do when Google took away the rankings. I was like, no, mummy. So that was
Also, I think, Paul, the challenge now is many of us were trained for a world that no longer exists, right? So when I think back to all the great people I've worked with in sales, and they're all, leaving jobs or being axed at the minute, and they're all great getting together and they're setting up Revenue Magazine because there's loads and loads of experience and knowledge. Just because you hit 45, 50 doesn't mean that you are cast to the wind sort of thing. So, revenue leaders have got a lot to do with more. We've got to do more with less nowadays. So traditional training, it's about pivoting, it's about agility, it's speed. It's basically one of the things I've enjoyed since leaving corporate, because I spent years watching loads of people in NetSuite and Salesforce. They all go to San Francisco, they get sheep dipped, they do the traditional training in Medic, they all come back, and there's 6 months to, there's a hill you need to die on or become successful. There's your desk, there's your sales loft, there's your data enrichment tools, good luck. And they've stripped away the human piece of their building relationships. And then I think when COVID hit, it stopped us going out field selling. So we were kind of forced to spend 2 or 3 years doing death by Teams and Zoom calls, weren't we? And I think we've never really got back to that because, when we were selling successfully and doing really well, percentage close rates went up 40, 50. But if we just got in the room and built human connective tissue with the guys, whether it's a partnership or it's a client. And so nowadays we've got all these tools at our disposal, and I really enjoy getting on the tools, building go-to-market and strategy plans in hours, not days and weeks. And I'm building automated workflows, basically using Perplexity, Manus, ChatGPT, and Notebook LM to build podcasts and better understand, the client engagements now. So it's about also training's changed, but it's also on the onus of being digitally curious and wanting to learn this stuff as well. And I think that's the 3 things holding AI back at the minute, which is the budgets aren't there, the ROI metrics aren't there, and the upskilling around some of these tools is probably still not where it should be.
Yeah, and I think there's definitely we've got AI. Yeah, we've got AI as well. Yeah, we've got AI. And everyone obviously is jumping on the AI bandwagon because it's a big topic. We in my experience, the last few months, it's amazing how many sales leaders I speak to that are starting to get already a bit, not disbelieving, but untrusting of some of the AI stuff that's coming through. I call it AI without the why. Go and do this because AI tells you to. And it's that black box environment. There's never any insight or reasoning behind it. And you do it. And so often you find out, actually, it's not right. They're sending me off on wild goose chases and things like that. And then they come back. And then the next time they get the AI signal, they go, I don't trust it. So I think, don't get me wrong, AI is the future and we've all got to adopt it. But we've got to be careful that we don't just blindly trust AI without having that insight. And so anyway, AI with the why is where I think we should be going. But on that AI topic, and I'm sure we'll dig into it in a bit more, tell me about your thoughts around AI acting as a coach rather than just being, as we were talking about, someone just throwing data at sales.
So AI as a coach is useful. From my perspective, you can't get a transformational result from an informational product. I got this from a guy called Lanny Basham, who was he won a gold medal at the Olympics. And what that means is if you think of a book or an online course, you're not going to get transformation out of that unless you've got 3 further steps. You need application by an expert. So you need a Paul or a Dave or a John or a Lucy or whatever. You need somebody to tell you how to apply the knowledge that you've got. And so AI can do part of the job if there's not a human there. Ideally, you have a human, but ideally can do part of it. Confirmation you're doing it right. AI can do a little bit of that, but not all of it. And then also consultation, the ability to ask a question and get an answer. It can do that quite well. So it's just a case of how can you get some of the lifting lifted off of the human, but then you need the why, that confirmation you're doing it right, that consultation, and it will give you part of the lifting, but not all of it, because we're people. Where I think AI misses is the emotion. It can give you all the logic in the world, but, it can't tell you how you can look in somebody's eyes. And if they're blinking like that, you think, well, they're not taking it in. Whereas if they're staring at you and they're staring at you, then you're going, this person's taking it in. And it's hard for an AI to teach that, but it can give you some of the lifting, and as it's doing in places, but not all of it. It can't do all of it.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned that because do you remember we went to the Learning Technologies event in London earlier this year? And it was just full of wonderful learning management systems from Synthesia to everything else in between. And it's feature rich and it's all AI infused, etc. But no one could tell us on the stand what the price was. No one could actually do a demo. And there was one guy, 30 people on the stand. No one could explain it. No one could sell it. And it's like, there was just, we came away, didn't we, thinking, well, even the people selling this stuff need to learn how to sell.
That was the biggest thing.
Right, young things. All right, well, how much does it cost and can I see it working? No, because there's one guy that can only demo it and he knows everything. And what are you, all 25 of you doing then, standing around giving out free stuff?
But nobody was trained on sales. No one was trained on how to sell the bloody thing. They were talking about all the features you got. Like,
And it's amazing how this day and age, and we all should, no one should be doing it now, but you speak and hear so many salespeople and they're still just selling features. And it's just amazing that this day and age that's still the case. You know, I recently I've just done a round of hiring, and the number of people I interviewed from the big companies, let's just say that the big enterprise companies we all love and know, put them in a lane, give them a script, they'll go and do it, and they sell because they're backed by this huge logo. Put them in an environment like ours where you have to explain what we do, and many companies don't know who you are, and therefore you've got to get the old traditional sales, and they're just not up to it. So I think it's really interesting. So I suppose that brings me on to the next bit of the topic, really. Is it the elephant in the room? I don't know. But most sales training out there done by these big organizations seems to me like a tick box exercise. To your point, Dave, oh yeah, they watched the video, they must be trained on it. So maybe Barry, this one's for you. Can you explain how the teach back methodology fundamentally changes retention and why getting reps to teach content back, transforms everything they're able to do?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think people forget 70% of learning out of the gate within 24 hours, and also I think people retain 90% when they teach it to others. So, it's like when we go down the pub after work or with friends on the weekend, it's all about storytelling and it's about basically, oh, you should have heard what I heard. So there's that sort of repartee going on as well. So it's a form of social currency. It's a chance to validate what's going in. I think when you put people in rote learning in a classroom-based situation, and I think a lot of it's compliance-driven. I remember, we had to do security training. We had to learn on a platform. We had to learn this. And it's because you have to get to 100 and it ticks a box for someone. But you're not really engaged with the content. You're not really, so this ability using AI as a sort of coach to real time and get it into your head as an always on sales coach, that reinforces the teach back. But teach back transforms retention because it kind of flips the model. Instead of just listening, sales reps have got to then, use it, teach back the value props, handle objections, demo feature rich stuff, building empathy with the buyer because the buyer's moved upstream nowadays as well. So where are they on the buyer's journey? Are they later in the cycle? Are they early in the cycle? So, it's all about building confidence. It's about building skill and then giving that tailored feedback so that you can almost become a coach to others. Because, one of the things I really enjoyed when I was doing enterprise selling was seeing new people come into the organization. And through my knowledge and experience of winning and losing enterprise deals, you can go into the weeds with them and really teach them this is the key steps in the process to bringing that buyer along with you. Where there's white spaces in your deal or in your knowledge, go and learn it. Don't make the same mistake time after time. If you are very poor at doing discovery, and your legacy discovery versus adaptive discovery. This is self-improvement. And these are all skills with Teachback that as you move from organization to organization, you bring that discipline and skill with you. It's not wedded to that organization you're working with at that moment in time. So, and the really good salespeople I've seen, they lean in, they don't talk about pricing early. They do a lot of discovery. I mean, we had a very large betting company as one of our clients, and we would spend 55 minutes chatting to their team about football. And then we'd spend 5 minutes at the end. But that's the trust building factor in there as well. We knew the platform. We'd done all the training. We knew where they were in their journey. But I think that the key thing around Teachback as well is not just understanding the features and platform features, etc., but it's also understanding the human connective tissue as well. And I think when you augment that sort of teach back format so the retention stays in there, plus you're building empathy and you're putting yourself in the shoes of the buyer. That's a very powerful combination.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And I was involved in an experience recently where, going back to Dave's earlier point, watch this video and then record yourself doing it. But then it was marked by AI. So if you read word for word what was on the script, you got a 10. If you just put the human side of it, you got a 5. And that sort of thing. That's where AI can get dangerous. So I mean, Dave, question for you: you've seen AI implementations that probably drown teams in noise, and against those that maybe actually drive behavioral change. What separates AI that coaches from AI that confuses?
I don't know. I wish I could say I know. I don't know how to answer that in the right way. I guess it's GIGO, garbage in, garbage out, right? The last question you asked Barry about teach back, maybe this answers it in some kind of way. There's a guy called William Bennett who I met the other week in London, who's a lawyer. He's one of the top lawyers in Jersey, and his son there is Arthur, and they've been doing this little AI training company. So I met William and Arthur. They're both like 6'3", 6'4". They're like the land of the giants, and I'm 5'6". So I'm stood next to these guys. I met a guy from Jersey, and like there's $1 trillion of wealth in Jersey, so we talked about doing some training there. And I was asking him to describe his business, and I thought sometimes you want to do things because, they don't make sense, but they feel right. And so I said, I'm going to train you, boy. He's 19 years old. He didn't go to uni. He had a business partner, ripped him off. So I started training William's son, Arthur. And William's my age. I said, I'll teach him about the DNA of persuasion influence. I'll teach him about Cialdini stuff, pitching, framing, negotiating. And then 2 weeks later, he says, I've done your course. No, you haven't. No, you haven't. You haven't done a single teach back. Well, I don't see the point. I know it. And so I started questioning. I said, get your dad on. We'll do a Zoom. I said, I'd teach you. I said, I charge 10 grand to put people through this. So I've just put him through the course. He's gone through. He's done it in 2 weeks. And he's an absolute genius. The kid's really, really bright. And he'd done a call last week and he went, oh my God, I was using Socrates on the call and I could see myself doing it. He said, I was giving them 3 options, a good, a better and a best option. Now, had he watched the videos, which he did, he hadn't got any of it. But when he put teach back into what he was doing, it changed him. And when he couldn't talk to me, I said, do you use AI? I said, oh yeah, I asked it questions. He said, but obviously I wanted to talk to you. So it just lifted some of the burden off of me. So for me, it was like, how do I make it optimal and simple? So now that kid, right, he closed 6 sales, he told me yesterday, and that made me feel great. And he was doing 1 or 2 or none. But he's putting this thing on, we'll teach you AI to anybody, free on Facebook. 90 people come in saying they're going to book for this thing, 30 show up, and he sold 6. Our best ever. The only reason he could do that was because, A, he learned about what we call the core fundamentals. He learned about Socrates. If we're still talking about somebody 2,500 years after they died, that they knew something. So you want to know that they know it exactly. And so he knows it exactly. He talks about the science of influence. He knows about the influence principles. He knows them exactly. And now what that's done is it's changed his self-image. Right. So that's what it's done. So we've got a good implementation of it. One of my friends said to me once, smart is smart, but smart ass is smart ass. I think we should keep it really small and don't overcommit. How do we keep AI really, really small and then don't overcommit to it and then get utility from it and test and learn? That's my answer anyway. But I'm probably not the best person to answer loads on AI because focused on training and implementing, and I won't bullshit you or the people listening.
No, well, it's a coach, not a cop, as we say, right?
Yeah. Does that answer it? Does that answer what?
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's everything you're answering here is relevant, and this is the whole point of these sessions, right? It's not me telling you, give me this answer. It's opening it up for discussion. So I think it's working really well. So everyone talks about strategies and go to market. We're going to do this and we're going to do that. And often when boardrooms come up with that, it sounds brilliant and they think that's fantastic. But when it actually gets out to the field, it all crumbles and falls apart. What do you see are the biggest execution gaps? And do you think teach back and AI is the solution to bridging them? Either of you can answer that one.
From my perspective, if I think back to my days, if you work in manufacturing, right, and you don't get it perfect, you produce waste. So working in the shoe factory, they used to have this track, and it was consistent. In the army, when I was in the army, if you didn't follow the rules and the orders that everyone was going to do, and obviously people got killed. So how good do you want to make sure that if you're an operational person, you want your operation to be seamless. If you're flying a plane, you want them to take off and land perfectly, or at least be really, really good at it. And you want to see somebody doing it. So to me, it's about making sure you train your people properly, and then you've got some kind of an audit process. And so Teach Back's no more than an audit, but it's changing self-image. That's my answer.
Yeah, and it's a superpower, and it's continuous learning. So it forces retention, builds confidence, and that drives performance and pipeline completion and less churn. And the other thing is culture as well. If you've got a team where everyone's in that sort of same mindset, it's a great feeling. It's like being on a submarine and all the little engines are rolling together and everyone's aligned and everyone's being successful, and there's a culture of helping each other. And not everyone has all the answers. So if there's a colleague in your team as well, work with them. Always follow the top people. That's what I always did in my career. I found the best guy in the room. I went and learned from him. I was like, who's the top guy here? Why is he so successful? What behavior traits does he have? They stay back longer, they practice longer, they ask better questions, always leaning into the client. They ask questions like, not open-ended, but they will say, what happens if we don't do this? What are the metrics around this stuff? And you get into that questioning funnel, and in a way you bring your buyer with you because you're making them a hero. You're answering their problems and you're leaning in and demonstrating, mental intelligence around it, curiosity. We've got your back. Failure's not an option. So, Teach Back gives you that confidence. And I've seen it in practice where, classically we've got a team. One of my clients got a team of 6 guys. They're really, really struggling. You come in, you start giving them these tools and disciplines, and they start to kick in. They get more comfortable. You see a visible uplift in closed-won pipe. You see a visible confidence and swagger to them as well. Everything improves. Their data hygiene, how they look at a deal, they get straight into it. And it's quite mesmerizing when you see these things in practice being translated from the boardroom into action in the field.
So my first big client that I worked with, she ran the British Standards Institute, a lady called Maureen Sumner Smith. She said, what do you do? And I just sold my business. I said, well, I've just started working with Robert Cialdini, teaching influence. What do you want to do? I said, I want to start a training business. And she said, you should come and work with me. So I worked with them for 18 months, 400 of their salespeople, and we put their sales up by 40% by making sure each person taught back what they learned. And I've flown all over the globe, still got the pictures and the mind maps and all the rest of it. So when you see, and I was surprised. I'm like, these people have been trained. But I ran a smaller business. We'd got a couple of hundred people. They'd got thousands. I'm like, well, if they've been trained, where's the evidence they've been trained? Yeah. Show me they've been trained. They don't know about negotiation, the predictive responses. They don't know about the principles of influence. How can they have been trained? So what I considered the fundamentals were just missing. And so I'm like, well, we'll go and train them, and then they'll teach back, and then we'll go and deploy them. And then all of a sudden, Maureen said something lovely to me. She said, I'd have been screwed if I hadn't met you. I was like,
that's what I mean. People's careers depend on it sometimes.
Because it made a difference. And that was lovely, and gave me the best testimonials ever. So it works on a small scale. It works on a big scale. And ultimately, when people actually do the thing that you want them to do, when you see them doing it, Paul, do you trust them more or less?
Obviously. It's an interesting thing, because actually my best salespeople now are helping me train the other salespeople.
There you go.
And it's, whether you call it teach back, whatever, it's their ability to know that what they're saying is right and how they say it right. And we use Gong quite a lot. I don't know if Gong's the technology you utilize at all, to listen back. And then we sit down and coach using that. Now I do it a lot, but now my sales team have started to say, hey, jump on a call with me for 5 minutes. I just want to tell you how I would have framed this. And it's a lovely thing to see.
That's what I was saying earlier. When everyone's aligned in that culture of improvement and getting, because we all know what the stake is. These technologies and teach back methodologies just give you that edge, that sizzle as well. So it really is a superpower. I mean, I've been at events with Dave. People run up to him like he's the Messiah, going, "Oh my God, thank you! You saved my life. I was there. Do you remember that guy we were with at the event?" Yeah. So it's really, because people remember that. People always remember their best teachers, and they remember them with fondness, don't they, from school days, perhaps. So when people come into your life and they give you this power and this information and empower you, it's quite a joy to behold. Especially when they run up to you in the street going, "Oh my God, I would have been sunk without you."
It's a great feeling. The cultural side is really important, and I think that often gets overlooked, especially when companies are growing fast. What's your thoughts on how you preserve that human authenticity that builds that trust? while you're still trying to leverage those AI and structured methodologies.
Yeah, I mean, look, culture is your real competitive edge. I've seen it done well and I've seen it done badly. I mean, companies that are just building tech stacks, they lose sight of the human side. And then this is probably why sales teams churn a lot as well. When you've got a churning sales team, it sort of impacts the rest of it. So I think empathy, curiosity, trust, having a great line manager, having, being listened to, having regular cadences, where could I improve, coaching, things like that. It's not just about bringing up your Salesforce dashboard and seeing where you are in the pipe deal, 40%, 60%. Where are the white spaces in my deal? How could I improve for the next time? So for me, scaling without soul crushing means keeping authenticity, I suppose, at the core, and using AI as a coach, not just to, not a cop. So you shouldn't use it with a big stick. So I think, giving people back time to be authentic, to really put themselves into it. And as I said, there's a lot of knowledge out there. I mean, I've seen brilliant salespeople move on, who become, and not all great salespeople make great sales managers either. So, these tools and embracing these tools, the collective wisdom of everybody in sales as well in that team, builds a great culture. And then as we say, all boats rise together, right?
From my perspective, really, the culture side of things, you're doing it. So if you're getting people coaching each other, the only thing I think put in place is put the language in place. So if somebody's talking about Socrates, or they're talking about framing, or they're talking about negotiation, or they're talking about influence, everybody's talking the same language. BSI guys, when we did it with them, got a lovely testimonial on it, and they used to do what you're doing. Like, they do deal clinics every day, listen to yesterday's calls, then they'd go and then they'd coach on, well, you could have used a better Socratic question, you could have reframed that better, you could have future paced here. But everybody needs to understand the basic nomenclature and the skills and the tactics, like having the tools in your toolbox. But what you're doing is culture. That's where the culture gets built, because you're connecting the disconnected, you're connecting people. And that's lovely then. So I'm coming to work not just to do a job, but to help other people. And that's how we grow together, build those experiences. It's lovely.
Yeah, absolutely. And we talk about tech, and I know I speak to lots of sales leaders that say, right, we need to solve this problem, buy more tech. But they're still seeing the execution is just as poor. So where do you think they should start as they look to implement maybe AI as a true coaching tool, rather than just another reporting layer, dashboard, whatever?
From my perspective, it comes down to two things. There's two fundamental pieces that you need to put in place. The first one is teaching people about the right mental attitude, right? So there's a definition to a positive mental attitude, a negative mental attitude, inertia. So we need people to have the right mental attitude in any given set of circumstances, incorporating the plus traits of life, having that can-do, will try attitude, teaching that, and then also teaching people the right work ethic, how to go the extra mile. And then if we get the right mindset and the right work ethic, then whatever we're going to take on board, we'll take it on board with the right frame of mind. That's the piece of training we can put in place. And then whatever the tech is, it's going to be great at something. Our job is to work hard enough to find out the what, and then also have the right mindset and not say, this is rubbish. We're in very, very, very changing times. The things are different this week to last week, but our ability to have the right mindset, to reframe negative situations, to be positive, and to actually work really hard, they're three key fundamentals from my point of view.
Yeah, same. I would concur with most of that as well. Align your go-to-market around the buyer, not an org chart. Don't be drowning, because it's overwhelming. When I see how much tech is in these organizations, how many logins do you need, right? You've got data enrichment tools, you've got ABM testing tools, you've got Salesforce. If it's not on Salesforce, it doesn't exist, or HubSpot, and it creates a paucity of time for reps to get creative, because they're just drowning in all this tech and reporting and being measured. And I think that's the bit that strips away the fun in the job nowadays compared to 10 years ago for me. Used to get out on the road with your colleagues, have a beer, go to nice locations, sit with the client, build affinity, have a laugh, come back, get the deal. Now it's like Robotron almost for a lot of the new generation coming through.
Yeah.
It's like, and if you're not successful in 3 months with all this tech, we're going to fire you. I mean, how does that inspire and encourage anyone to kind of be the best version of themselves, right?
And also when you even things like hiring people, right? How many times I hear it that you interview like this to 5, 6 different people and then get the job. And then 3 months later, you actually meet in person and go, no, this isn't a salesperson. Do you know what I mean? It's so important, that human side of it. And luckily, I think, the last year or so, I've seen a lot more events and trade shows, and we've had a lot more face-to-face meetings with customers. So it's going back It'll never get back to the fun days it was, but it's definitely getting better.
Well, my old boss would say, look beyond the CV. If you go to Welcome to the Jungle or any of these job boards nowadays, first of all, good luck getting past the applicant tracking system. Number two, it's like, you don't get a chance to shine your person out. And the interview process is like elongated. They have to do psychometric tests and surveys and meet 10 people. It's crazy.
So one thing where
Sorry, go on.
one thing where our tech's amazing, when you hire somebody, it's going to be a gamble, right? But if you ask them to teach me back Socrates, framing, negotiation, positive mental attitude, the influence principles, while they're teaching you back and you're doing no work because you've got it built into your learning management system, you're assessing to say, is this person any good or are they useless? And you can tell by seeing what they do, not what they say, but what they actually do while they're in their probationary period and when they're in their learning. Are you a winner or a loser? Any good, no good, lazy, not lazy? And that's a game changer. So the onboarding of new people that's our superpower, because you get to see while they're going through that gestation period, that first 4 weeks, whatever it is, if they can teach back and do it really, really well, where your talent is or where the garbage is, and you should never have taken them on board. And that's amazing.
The other thing is for Dave,
really,
for Swader, we're talking sales and marketing, but some of the projects Swader are involved with are literally life and death. People going back to work or people on building sites in the Middle East blowing themselves up. And if you can't teach in the content around health and safety, for example, and they're blowing their arms and legs off with sticks of dynamite because the language, they all put them in a tent in the middle of somewhere. But, powerful apps now that are coming out, they're multilingual, so it can be personalized for the person doing the training and the teach back. And then they need to know that that it's gone in, because, there's been so many accidents happening in the workplace as well. So we're talking sales and marketing, but these technologies are very powerful outside of just sales and marketing.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in all this stuff. So for the listeners, have you got a specific example where the teach back side of things transformed a struggling sales team performance and what the concrete results that were delivered? I don't know if you're able to mention company names, but an example, if not.
Yeah, I mean, we've got tons, absolute loads. I mean, if you go to Trustpilot, put Swader in, you'll see loads. One that springs to mind, that's a real academic one, small business in the States, called Synalytic. And there's a guy there that works for NASA called Dev Sen, one of the brightest people in the world, like 2 PhDs and him and his business partner. I was introduced to those guys and they were saying, we've created this really cool piece of technology whereby in the film industry, if you put Brad Pitt into the film or you're going to put, I don't know, Tom Cruise, who's going to be the best actor? And then they've got workflow. And they were saying, we can't sell it. We're not selling what we should be selling. And my thing is, okay, do your people have the competencies? Do you have the competencies? Do you know about Socrates? And they're like, no. Okay. Do you know about reframing, pre-framing, deframing? No. Okay. What about future pacing? Good, bad anchors? No. So how can you talk to people if you don't have the basic competencies? So next thing you know, they go, and then the business goes bang. And also, you thought about what other things that you could use this for? How good are you at communicating with people? And so there's basic building blocks that are just missing. And then obviously we've got tons more case studies, but if you don't teach people in the first instance the basic fundamentals, you haven't got a prayer. It just cannot work. And just look at Trustpilot and you see tons and tons, or go to Swader and you'll see case studies from BSI, from DNV, from lots of places. But fundamentally, my passion is sales, as you probably can gather. I love that because it changed my life. But obviously, we use sports fitness, sports science, whatever, but it's all about making sure somebody can demonstrate competence. Show me you can do it. If you show me and you show everybody else, then I'll believe you. If you can't, forget it. And then put it on video so that if you leave, I can show what Marco used to look like and what he did when he was in. He was our best salesperson, because then we've got that in place.
Yeah, I've been applying the principles of Teach Back for a couple of my scale-ups. The most important thing as well, cost money to hire people. And when you get the hire wrong, it costs, time and money. So by applying Teach Back to make them successful as they come in the door, learning these disciplines from day one, we've seen the churn numbers drop by 50% as well from coming in. And then the sales teams now, the deal increased by 35% using this as well. So that was a big jump there. So again, the difference isn't more training material. It's making sure what you do teach goes in. builds the culture, makes them feel part of the fixtures and fittings inside the organization, and turning that knowledge into capability. And that creates more of a safe space for these reps to flourish and then kick on in their career, rather than have you done the training, tick a box, you're not hitting your numbers, we're going to fire you, and you move on. And then, so we need to stop that. There's been too much of that. I mean, I've had some guys in my network that have had 3 different jobs in a year. I mean, you can't just keep hopping from job to job. So this is why Teach Back, when you get it, they will take those skills into their next career path as well.
Yeah, no, I can't remember where I read it now, but there's a quote saying that I don't want to spend all this money training someone, get them to the fantastic position, and then they'll leave. But surely that's better than not training anyone and they stay with you for 6 years and fail. Yeah, that all makes sense. So sales reps are skeptical of new tools and methodologies. We all know that. So from your experience, how do you get buy-in for AI-driven coaching, peer-to-peer teach-back approaches without creating or overcoming that resistance? I open that both of you.
Ultimately, from my perspective, if something's really, really good and it saves you time, then you get engagement. And if it's just bang average and rubbish, then it won't get engagement. So the proof of the pudding's in the eating, and ours is really good, and obviously it gets engagement. But you need to make it brilliant. Either that or forget it. So that's how we get the engagement. And obviously, teaching back is nothing more than learning from your next door neighbor. It's about being nosy. So people are nosy. They want to see what anybody else is doing. And if you can learn from the best people in your organization, obviously that makes a difference.
Yeah, and I'd say like a lot of enterprises, they're very prescriptive, the way they kind of force technology on the reps now as well. If you look at Salesforce now, they're using Agentforce, and they want their own reps to use these technologies to do better diary management, calendar setting, outreach, discovery as well. But it still comes back down to the same basic principles. You've got to know your ICP anyway, whether that's with or without AI tools, and teach back. What are the pain points? What's the message? If it's not working, pivot. Is the distribution channel right? I think the onus is also on the rep, right, to be curious. So you can lead a horse to water, you can't make it drink. I've seen so many sales teams just baptize in value-based selling frameworks and MedPick and everything else. So once that's ingrained in you anyway, that sort of, repetition. The teach back option is to kind of accelerate you from just being an average seller to being an exceptional seller. And I think that's where people play that back in their heads. They know the white spaces in their deal. They know the questions to ask. They know how to put themselves in the shoes of the buyer and kind of sell solutions, not features and widgets, etc. And the teach back thing is just another tool in their armory for us. So whether you're using platform, whether it's mandatory or not, as a lot of tech companies are, is very much, for me, the onus is on the rep to accelerate. And if they're doing it properly, they'll see that in their monthly and quarterly commission checks.
Yeah, and we see that a lot. So we've got most of our team are doing really well, but some are doing exceptionally well. And they're the ones that are coaching and teaching the rest of them, what I'm doing that works. And hearing from your peers, I think is definitely better than a manager saying you must do it in this way, especially if they're being successful. So it makes sense. So we touched on AI earlier in the session, but as we look ahead, how do you think the combination of AI coaching, teach back methodologies, as they're evolving, what do sales leaders need to do to prepare for it?
From my perspective, if you look at most onboarding with regards to sales training, roughly what happens is a third of people, 35 people will fall out. 35% of people will fall out of training. If you bring in 100, 35 will be gone by the first year. The big issue with regards to any kind of training is the flash to bang time. So you bring somebody in day one, it takes you 6 months to know if they're any good. And that's a nightmare because you've brought them in, you've put them through your e-learning, which is click next and do the quiz. They might do it or give it to their teenage kid and get them to do it for a tenner. We might as well have asked them to wash the car and walk the dog in real terms for the good it does. And then they sit in a boot camp for 3 weeks and don't do anything. That's an issue, whether it's people doing it, AI doing it, or whatever's doing it when it's 6 months. What we do differently is we put people in and we're saying, day one, you're Johnny on the spot. Demonstrate you've learned this piece of material, teach it back, and then I'll verify it. And then when you're looking at them, everybody else in the company is looking at them and saying, they'd fit our culture, they're a really good fit, or they're lazy and they're not a good fit. So we know in 3 weeks if somebody's going to be good. Whether that's AI doing it or whether that's a person doing it, it's about flipping the script and saying, show me, demonstrate, and I'll verify. And if you can do that in 3 weeks, then you're in. And obviously technology is just going to make it so that people aren't so cognitively biased, but that's the real onboarding system, that 35% gap. that, just needs to be done. And in technical based sales, like if you're selling a SaaS product, it's more than 35%, it's up to 60% in some industries. But what we want to do is reduce the flash to bang time. And flash to bang times in the army, when I used to be a soldier, you'd pull a trigger and then when it flashed, you'd see the bang, and then you go, it's 2 seconds. That means they're a mile away and we know where they are. So, that's how we see it.
Yeah, and I think the future is also, to Dave's point, it's capability over completion. Sales leaders aren't going to ask, has my team finished the training? So it ticks a box in some dashboard. It's more like, can my team demonstrate capability? And that's borne out through process, best practice, results, application, really leaning in and being, professional at what they do. So I guess AI is going to accelerate personalized learning at scale in whatever language that is nowadays. I mean, you've got so many different cultures and languages and people from different territories. And, it's not an English monosyllabic, one size fits all vanilla kind of approach to this, is it? You've got people from different nationalities, cultures, backgrounds in your team, selling to clients also who have different approaches, and they could be from different parts of the world, etc. So Teachback essentially, to today's point, ensures capability is visible, and that's the key word, Dave, verifiable, and then transferable across the organization. And if it's working, then typically good leaders, good managers, and the C-suite will see that's working and ask everyone to double down on what's being affected.
Yeah, it makes sense. And I'm assuming, the younger generation, as I call them, they all work in different ways right now. They want immediacy. They've got their little apps, or they're doing stuff on TikTok or whatever. So actually bringing that in as part of the training, I'm assuming, is pretty vital to it.
Yeah, absolutely. Just engaging in a way that people communicate today. That's what makes the difference.
Like I do a lot of my selling on WhatsApp. Is that all right? I mean, I don't know. In the old days, you had to send an email out. You had to track it in CRM. Has they opened the email? How many are in the sequence? I mean, people are you've got a good relationship with your prospect. You kind of move them off that channel, don't you? You kind of move them into a more conversational approach as well. And that's really where people, because it's also a speed thing. Get a quick reply on WhatsApp nowadays versus waiting 7 days for a reply on an email.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we're only scratching the surface on this. So I'm sure there's lots more we can come back on, and maybe we'll do a follow-up. But for now, you both sound like people who probably consume lots of content. So are there any books, blogs, newsletters, maybe podcasts you'd recommend to our listeners?
There is a lot. The problem is finding time to read them as well. So what I tend to do is grab a load of newsletters and podcasts, and I kind of also take reports, and I'll even create a notebook LM, and I'll basically create my own custom podcasts and listen to it out in the gym, out for a walk. So I kind of teach back myself. So I take all this information, because I haven't got time to read all these reports and newsletters and stuff that's hitting my inbox, and basically give it a nice prompt. So this week, I've really got to focus in on learning that, or learning this product, or learning this go-to-market strategy as well. So I'm more of an aggregator of information as well, where I kind of use it selfishly for my own means, because I've got stuff to do this week and targets to hit myself. So, I read books from Reid Hoffman, thought leaders out there. I've been tracking the guys that implement AI pretty closely as well. Their whole strap line is grow your workforce, not your payroll. So I'm really curious personally about automation and where it's all heading, etc. And we've got all these automation tools out there as well. So it's overwhelming, the volume of information, I think, as well. And even finding time, I'm one of those guys, even sitting down and reading a book feels like a luxury.
So mine's easy. The book I recommend everybody reads is Persuasion by Dr. Robert Cialdini. Obviously, I used to work with Bob. The thing about that is it's really good in terms of targeting the mindset. Everybody knows that when you're a kid, you had to get your mum or your dad in the right mood before you ask them. So Persuasion's about targeting mindsets, identifying triggers for those mindsets, moving the triggers and then extending them. And that's really, really powerful. And I think that, if everybody understands persuasion and influence comes with it, then it's powerful. So, my favorite book to recommend to anybody, read and understand and implement persuasion. You get people in the right mood, and guess what? Then they'll want to play. And we're emotional creatures having a human experience, and we shouldn't forget that. What about yourself? What
I was going to ask you, what's your preference there as well, Paul?
It's funny. I'll touch on that in a second, but I was just also going to say that I think what you were just saying there, David, is very relevant in the world of AI, where we're thinking AI is going to replace everything. That personal touch and that humanity is going to be so important to continue that on. And maybe we'll stand out the people who, from anyone who's just hiding behind AI. I've got so many, and like you were saying, Barry, there's too much really. I mean, I am constantly looking for new stuff. That's why I always ask this question, because there's stuff that I go out, and I'm definitely going to look at Persuasion after this. I've not read that book, so I will definitely be doing after this. There's too many to go after. I mean, you get experts like the John Millers of this world who are always looking at what is the next thing. Anyone who doesn't know, John Miller's the guy behind Marketo and used to be chief product officer at the OnBase. People like that. But it's a constant stream, and there's more and more coming all the time, I think.
I was in London at an event with and Bob Moore, the guy who runs Crossbeam. I know you'll know Crossbeam, and reveal that they merged last year. So Bob came out with a really good book as well called Ecosystem-Led Growth, which is, if we're going to be successful, it's about partnering for success and how going to market, you can get your close rates up, and not just channel partners and alliances, but just in general, this whole idea of, the ecosystem, all boats rise together. So that's another one potentially for your listeners as well, because it's a sales and marketing channel type audience. So really good by Bob Moore, the chief exec of Crossbeam.
Awesome. Thank you for that. So I'm sure you've opened up lots of future conversations that we can have on another podcast, but also there'll be listeners here who'll probably want to get in touch with you after this. What's the best channel for them to do that?
LinkedIn's always good, or email. So it's suada.com. Suada is SUADA. Suada is the goddess of persuasion. So SUADA.com. And it's David Thomson. Thomson as in, it used to be Thompson Holidays, Thomson without a P. So feel free to hook up, connect up on LinkedIn, or drop me an email, david@suada.com.
And I'm Barry@suada.com, just for the auspices of expedience.
Excellent. That's great. And what a great session. I as I say, I think we've opened the can of worms now, and we need to dig more into it. So hopefully you'll agree to come on a future podcast. And what you've proved to me is that multiple guests really work. So I'll definitely be looking at that in the future. Thanks very much for your time. I hope you've enjoyed being on this episode, and I hope everyone listening has enjoyed it. And don't forget, there's around 600 other episodes in the OnBase series, so make sure you check them out. Thanks for listening, everyone, and until the next time, cheerio.